You're now watching Canadian Mandarin Economics Television.
聚焦两地财经，关注中加商情。观众朋友，大家好，欢迎收看本期的1号演播室特别节目。房市过热这个词呢，在过去几年绝对是可以排到加拿大10大热词榜的前列了。那么，面对异常火爆的房地产市场，联邦政府终于又按耐不住，推出了新的房贷政策，来试图将多伦多、温哥华这样楼市过热的城市呢，来降降温。加拿大联邦财政部长莫奈在10月份突然宣布，为多伦多和温哥华火热楼市降温的新措施，要对购买了保险的房贷进行压力测试。从今年的10月17日起，无论首付比例多少，所有按揭申请都必须进行这个压力测试。压力测试的利率标准是按照加拿大央行的5年定期房贷利率，目前是 4.64%， 来检查贷款申请者是否具有还本付息的能力。然而，压力测试的利率通常比买家与银行谈的利率要高很多。例如，加拿大本地的 TD 银行的5年期固定利率目前是 2.59%， 与央行的 4.64% 相差了超过2个百分点。另外，压力测试还将家庭收入的 39% 作为上限，为贷款人的还款能力进行评估。例如，一位年收入10万元的家庭，如果首付只有4万元，按照旧规则，可以符合资格贷款购买价值66万元的房子。但是新政策实施之后，同样的年收入跟首付金额，这个家庭只能考虑购买价值50万元的房子。那么现如今呢，距离压力测试的实施是已经有2个月的时间了。那么在过去的2个月时间里，业内人士又对新出台的压力测试有什么样的看法？新出台的政策又对我们的房贷和房地产市场产生了什么样的影响呢？Hello, Peter. Hello, Ronald. Before we jump into today's topic, please introduce yourself to our audience first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Lee with Yonge Realty here in Toronto, Canada, and it's an honor for me to answer some of your top newsroom questions about real estate here today, and I hope you have some great questions for me.
My name is Ronald Lee. I'm the president of a private mortgage company called Ginkgo Mortgage Investment Corporation and a brokerage called the Mortgage Center.
Thank you, Ronald. Please tell us about more changes about the government recently announced.
Well, let me talk a little bit about the changes since 2012. In year 2012, the government already required the amortization of a mortgage to reduce from 30 years to 25 years. So that's one of the changes recently made. Now coming into 2016, in the month of February, the government further restricting mortgages so that anytime you purchase a house that is more than $500,000, you need to have a minimum down payment of 10%. Now, the most recent change occurred on October this year, where the government of Canada and the Ministry of Finance require all the banks and the lenders to qualify their borrowers with the standard Bank of Canada posted rate. Even though the contract rate of the mortgage is a lower rate for 5 years, but they still require a higher rate called Bank of Canada posted rate to qualify the mortgage, so that it's harder for client to obtain a mortgage. Why is the government want to do that? The reason is quite simple. Over the last 10 years, the property value and house prices in Canada has gone up so quickly. Give you an example here. A condominium that used to cost you $150,000 nowadays is more than $300,000. A house is worth $500,000 10 years ago, today worth more than $1.5 million. So a lot of people was having a hard time obtaining or purchasing this mortgage. A lot of people is having a hard time purchasing this home. First of all, they need a higher down payment. And secondly, even though they can get the mortgage, the monthly payment is so high that it's making it so hard to afford it. This caused concern of the government of Canada as well as the International Monetary Fund, IMF. So as a result, the government want to control the housing market, and that's why they implement the changes.
So Peter, what do you think about this new policy change, and what's the wider impact?
Well, so the new policy changes that happened in the middle of October of this year, there was a number of them, but the main one was that they were going to try to make it harder for newer and younger home buyers to really stretch their budget and buy a home. Because what we know is that a lot of local people and a lot of Canadians have been really trying to get a bigger mortgage because they want to be able to buy a house, something perhaps without any maintenance fees, and because the mortgage rates are so low, they wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. But the wider impact that we're seeing now is that the stress tests that the government has applied with the mortgages is actually making it harder for people to qualify. And so if they're not able to stretch because of bidding wars that are happening in the city and also just more expensive properties like the detached or the semi-detached properties, then people are having to downgrade their expectations. So what they're doing is they're looking at smaller properties, they're looking at more affordable properties now, such as townhouses, condo townhouses, and of course even condos. And right now we're actually starting to see condos really picking up with double-digit growth in the last 2 months, October and November.
So Ronald, what do you think how they will impact Canadian, especially Chinese immigrants?
I can summarize the impact into 4 categories. The first category of borrower are well-off new immigrants who are purchasing a home without the requirement of borrowing any money from the bank. The second category is new immigrants who can afford with 35% down payment and to purchase a home, and they are new immigrants to this country within the last 5 years. The third categories are middle-class immigrants who has a job and who is able to save up with 20% down payment and does not require any CMHC insured mortgages. The last category is for those middle-class immigrants who has a job but is not able to save up to 20% down payment. Let's look at each one at a time. Now, the first category, well-off new immigrants who does not require any mortgages from the bank. This new policy does not affect them at all. So for any well-off new immigrants, say from China, if you want to buy a home, they do not want to buy a home in Vancouver anymore because of the new taxes. They want to purchase a home in Toronto, they can still buy it. So it does not affect them at all. Now, the second categories are the similar well-off immigrants who purchase a home with 35% down payment. Now, as long as they do not purchase a home that is too expensive, more than $2 million, most of the time they can just walk to the bank and can get a mortgage without any problem. So this new policy also does not affect them at all. Now, the third category are the middle-income new immigrants who has a job, and they're able to come with 20% down payment to purchase a home. Since this new policy affects only insured mortgages, this policy also does not affect this type of category of borrowers. So what is really being impacted is the fourth category. Those are the middle-class immigrants who has a job but were not able to save up more than 10% down payment. Now, this type of borrowers, because they want to buy a home, they do not have enough down payment, they have no choice but walk to a bank and in turn go to CMHC, which is Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, to obtain a mortgage insurance. With the new policy, it mandates all such mortgages to be qualified under the Bank of Canada posted rate, which is now 4.64%, even though the actual mortgage rate is lower, let's say 2.5%. Now, let me use an example here. For a person who is making an annual income of $60,000, he was able to purchase a home that is $400,000 in the past. With the new policy, he can only purchase a home of $320,000, which is $80,000 less than what he was able to purchase. Now, even though this person is making $100,000 income per year, which is not for a lot of people, right now with this income and 10% down payment, he can only purchase a home up to $533,000. Now, let me ask you a question. What kind of home can one purchase nowadays in Toronto for $533,000? Probably not a lot of choices, right? So as you can see, the impact of this new policy affects mainly the first-time home buyer who cannot come up with more than 10% down payment and who are middle-class income earners. So this is the real impact of these new policies.
So Peter, do you think this time the government will get what they expect?
I think that there are some positive effects of the move made by the government, in particular the stress tests, because it's forcing people to think about going for more conservative properties. For example, like I said, like townhouses, townhouses, and condos. And so I think it's actually working exactly the way the government wanted it to work, because we're seeing a lot of movement in the condo game right now. People are deciding to choose condos instead because it's become way too expensive to buy a detached house. And so the desired effect is already there, and I think we're going to see more of that next year in 2017. Personally, I think it's a great move. I think it's the right thing to do. Sometimes we have to control people so that they don't get out of control with their debt and their financing, and so that they can afford to live comfortably instead of being house poor, is what we call it.
So Ronald, in your opinion, do you agree with all of the changes that government made?
Well, it depends on what kind of outcome the government want to expect. Now, if the government expected to control the housing prices because of foreign investors purchase all the property, causing all the uprising of the prices of the houses, I don't think this new policy change will have any impact on it. As I said to you earlier before, if you're a well-off investor from outside the country, not just China, but any other country, if you're well off enough, you do not need a mortgage, or you can afford 35% down payment. So these policies really does not affect this type of investors. So the only outcome or the impact of these changes are the local Canadians with less than 10% down payment who are middle-class income earners. Now, because of these changes, the demand of houses by this type of borrowers or buyer will be less because they can afford to purchase of a lower price houses. That means the demand of the higher prices of houses will be less, and therefore it definitely will lower or control the housing market to a certain degree. It will not be to the extent what the government is looking for. That's what my personal take on that.
Now let's get back to Peter. So to my understanding, for those people who couldn't afford 20% payment down, their opinion is either choose a home with less value or find a co-signer to bump up their purchasing price. So do you have any clients that has struggled with this pressure test?
So personally, I haven't had any clients that have been denied a mortgage or been told they can't buy something because of the new stress tests and the new government legislation. Maybe we will see more of those next year, but because the legislation came in pretty late in October of this year, so I personally haven't had a lot of clients that have had to go through that because a lot of them have more than 20% down, so we don't have a problem there. But I think what we're seeing is that, yes, people are definitely downgrading their expectations. They're buying a smaller property. They're being a little bit more conservative. And the thing is, you can still buy a property with 15%, with 10%, even with 5% down. The question really is whether you can afford to do it on a monthly basis. And if the government has increased the interest rate, which would make your monthly payment higher, the question is whether you can afford it with the income that you have, plus the down payment as well. So it's a very minor change in the marketplace, but it's enough to make some of the people who are pretty much on the edge not able to qualify and think a little bit more conservatively when they buy their next home.
Okay, the last question. Since 2008, the government has implemented 6 rounds of major adjustment for new government-backed insured mortgages and housing market. Without it change, it's aiming to regulate more and cooling off the real estate market. But today, we see the market is still booming. So what do you think what happened?
Well, every time when there's a government policy changes, I find it's always short term. Deep down, when people buy a house, there's only 2 reasons people buy a house. The first reason is that people want to buy a house to live. So if this is the case, no matter what, there's such a need, so you need to buy a house, you will still buy a house. So as long as there's new immigrant that comes in every year to this country, there's a need and the demand of houses. And therefore, no matter what changes there, it's going to be people buying houses because new immigrant comes in. So that impact will not affect too much of these people who need a home to live. Now, when you ask a question about the second type of people, why they buy a house, it's for investment purpose. Now, because it's for investment purpose, it could be someone who live here in Canada, or could be foreign money who choose to invest in Canada because they find that the real estate market in Canada is much better off than any other investment outside of Canada or other type of investment. Now, think about this type of investment. Why would people invest in real estate? Number one, they think that it's stable. It gives it a regular increase in return. So you're putting some obstacle here called the policy changes that affect the borrowing of money. But you have to look at the overall fundamental. Will investor has better option outside of Canada, such as United States of America, such as other Asian countries? Do they offer similar return of investment, stable environment for investing? So as long as they find Canada has a better investing opportunity and more stable return and a low interest rate environment, I don't think this policy change will affect this type of investment or investors a lot. Now, after all, why do we do all these policy changes? Deep down, I think the problem is interest rate. Government of Canada is not able to raise the interest rate for Canada for a long period of time. And because of the economy, they are not able to do that for the next near future. So they have no choice but to use the policy changes to affect the borrowing, which we find is not very effective. So if the interest rate remain low, people will continue to invest. So my thinking is that this change or the impact of this regulation will not affect the real estate market for a long period of time. When people really want to invest, they find a way.
I like to see things as big trends or small trends. So the big trends that are happening in Toronto right now is that the younger generation is growing up, so everyone's getting married, they're having families, they need to buy a house. So, regardless, they will need to buy something. It's just a matter of what they can actually afford. So that's a big trend. There's a lot of young people growing up. Another big trend is there's a lot of immigrants that are coming to Toronto, especially now with all the changes happening in Vancouver, where a lot of the foreign investors and immigrants are being taxed on their property. So we're seeing a lot of that movement coming to Toronto now. That's another big trend. I think we will continue to see more people coming from East Asia, and in particular, we're talking about China. So those are the bigger trends. But with the small changes that are happening in the marketplace, again, I consider those small changes to try to make some adjustments, right? But in Vancouver, when they introduced the 15% foreign buyers tax, that was a pretty big change. That really affected the market almost immediately. So in Ontario, we're a little bit more conservative, I would say, in my opinion. So they generally make smaller changes that don't affect the market overall. But as you just said, we're still continuing to see the market continue to keep going up. And the reason for that is because of these bigger trends that we're talking about. So, you can't really stop people from buying a house if they're going to get married and have a family, right? They will have to buy something regardless. And a lot of the investors and the immigrants, they want to be here. Toronto is a final great destination for people to live here. It's a great place to raise your family. And so that will continue to happen. It's just that it will become maybe more expensive or just a little bit harder. But I don't think it will slow down the big trend.
This is the interview we had with Ronald Lee and Peter Lee to talk about new policy change on housing market. And again, thank you very much for joining us today. 好的，感谢您收看本期的1号演播室，我们下期节目再见。